Did you know over 60% of first-time clients do not return for a second visit? That is so painful, but it doesn't have to be that way. That's where Maya comes in. Maya is the ultimate marketing software for the beauty and wellness industry. We have a proprietary funnel utilizing special algorithms to help connect the right consumers with the right providers at your business. This means that Maya helps you get higher spending clients you love to work with who stay the long haul. If you want to increase your revenue, increase your client count, increase your average ticket, and increase your new client retention, then you need Maya. Go to joinmaya.com to set up your own personal virtual tour and see why over 500,000 consumers have trusted Maya and the businesses we work with to find their perfect beauty and wellness pro. We promise you will love Maya.
Thank you for joining me. This is Kati Whitledge with the Beyond the Technique podcast. Today we have Stephen Moody here. I'm not kidding you. We finally landed Stephen Moody. And today we're going to talk about something dear to his heart, Gen Z stylists, proving their success in today's market. So we're going to talk about what Gen Z stylists need for future success. So for those of you who may not know about Stephen Moody, and you might be a Gen Z, right? Like if you don't know him, it may be that you are of that newer generation to the industry, but he is the John Paul Mitchell Systems artistic director and award-winning global hair cutting educator. He's one of the world's foremost educators of professional hairdressers. Hailing from a family of hairdressers, he is a 31-year plus veteran of the Sassoon Salon and Academy organization. He launched and successfully developed Sassoon's Academy in Santa Monica, San Francisco, Miami, Toronto, Chicago, London, and Shanghai. During his tenure, he worked on curriculums, capability building, product development, stagecraft, TV commercials, print shoots, hair shows, seminars, and Vidal Sassoon Academy classes. My friends, this man has been at a whole other level his entire career. We're going to hear about his journey and how he has gotten to where he is today. And without further ado, help me welcome the man himself, the legend, not the myth, right? He's here. Stephen Moody, welcome to Beyond the Technique.
Katie, thank you so much for having me on Behind the Technique with you, with Katie. I'm so excited to be here and to be sharing. Thank you. And by the way, I'm only a legend, Katie, in my own shower.
In your own shower?
Yeah.
Imagine that. So you have this accent, so automatically we think you're smart and attractive and awesome. Where are you originally from? Where did you grow up?
I was born and raised above a hair salon. Mom literally went upstairs, laid on the bed, and gave birth to me in a small, rural, blue-collar coal mining village. It wasn't even a town. I'm talking about a village, very, very small. Picture kind of beards, one eyebrow. That's just the women. Very, very industrial and not fashionable at all. So that's where I was born and raised. It's a place called Yorkshire. And I kind of had an upbringing that really was based around a salon. So dinner time at our house was sitting around with my mum and dad and talking about their day with the clients, the staff, training the staff, who'd left, who they'd just hired, how they were going to market their salon. So it was pretty much 24/7 hair salons business. And as people listening to this podcast well know, it's not always plain sailing.
That is so interesting that you are literally a child and this is part of your upbringing. For those that are living, who struggle with geography, where is the village you grew up in? What country?
Okay, so if you look at the map of the United Kingdom, and in the bottom is London, arguably the capital city of hair. And at the top is Scotland. If you stuck a pin in the middle between Scotland and London, that's probably around about where I'm at. And it's quite interesting, really, because it's not a fashionable area at all. The whole, that area has produced some absolutely incredible global hairdressers. I think there's been 3 British hairdressers of the year that have come from that area. One of my co-artistic directors at Paul Mitchell is from that area too. His name is DJ Muldoon. So proportionally, it's just not a place you'd look at and think, oh my God, you know, that's really cool and edgy and fun and fashionable and hair trendy. But obviously, women in that part of the world, they take a great pride in their makeup, in their hair, in their hair color, in fashion. And want to look really, really well because look really good because, yeah, salons do well in that part of the world. So, yeah.
Did you stay with your family business, Stephen, or what prompted you to move out and explore and get into that scene of Vidal Sassoon? Was that the next stage of your journey?
So, yeah, I think that's a good question, Katie. How did I gravitate to London and how did I gravitate to Sassoon? My mum was a Sassoonaholic. So didn't drink, didn't smoke. And every year, like clockwork, like someone going to Mecca every year, she would go to Sassoon every year and learn whatever was new. What was the new trend? What was the new haircut? And those haircuts usually began with the word "the." So it was the wedge, or the firefly, or the halo. A bit like today, we look at Instagram and talk about the pixie, or the jellyfish, or whatever. But she did that by going to the Harvard of hair, really, which was Sassoon Academy. So as a kid growing up, I just kept hearing about this man's name and this place. And by the time I came of age, I worked in my mum's salon for a stretch. But I really had this vision, Katie, of working in the hair business, but not working with Mrs. Smith. Stephen, what does that mean? It meant that I'd been raised on Mrs. Smith's lap. So from being a tiny baby, I got passed from client to client because she couldn't always afford to have childcare. And when I was old enough, I crawled around on the floor. And then growing up at the dinner table, as I mentioned earlier, it was just all about the trials and tribulations of building a clientele, keeping a clientele, building a staff, training a staff, building salons, building businesses. So I kind of had this gravitational pull to 2 things, really. One was working with professional hairdressers. Having the hairdresser as my client rather than Mrs. Smith, because I'd been around Mrs. Smith for many, many years by the time I went into. And for me, there really was only one place, and that was the Harvard of hair, which was Sassoon. So again, for people that are listening to this who are maybe Gen Z, who are not familiar with what on earth is this, I think many people listening to this podcast have an iPhone. And the company that made that iPhone is Apple. And the genius behind Apple was a man called Steve Jobs. So if you really look at modern hair, you can really kind of drill back to an organization called Sassoon and Sassoon Academy and Sassoon Salons. The man who literally was at the forefront of that was a man called Vidal Sassoon. So there's an analogy, there's a parallel between Sassoon Salons and Sassoon Academies and Apple, and Vidal Sassoon and Steve Jobs. That's a great way to think of it.
Yeah, I love it.
You mentioned in your introduction, Katie, about, really me being fascinated, and I think both of us probably fascinated by Generation Z, that younger group of hairdressers. I think one of the words of wisdom that I love to pass on to people is to really understand where we are now and to understand where are we going. It's a good idea to look at where have we been. And yeah, I mean, we've got a great resource in Google and now AI to do that research and understand that
I have
that path.
no, I'm curious before we dive into that, because I think that's so important. What what did you take away from your mom and the influence she had on you as a professional? And then that number one thing, what was that number one thing from your mom? And then what was that number one thing from Vidal Sassoon? When I think of Vidal Sassoon, I think of precision. That's the one word that comes to my mind. But you tell me, what was the one thing from your mom that impacted the rest of your professional career? And then what was that one thing that you took from Vidal Sassoon experience?
I think so. Starting with mum, she didn't take prisoners. She didn't take prisoners. So whether it was a staff member or it was a woman coming to get her hair done, this is how you're gonna. She said, "I'm gonna cut your hair. This is how you're gonna wear your hair. Here's the reason why." She didn't ask; she told them. And it was the same with staff. It was, this is going to be the training program. This is what you're going to do. And if you don't do that, there's the door. So that I think was, it was like a singular vision and a singular passion to be successful. And then I think going to Sassoon and to Sassoon Academy, I think one of the things I really learned there, the biggest takeaway for me was how to share with hairdressers, how to inspire hairdressers, how to, obviously, you talk about precision cutting. I mean, that's part of it for sure. But it was really kind of working week in and week out, year after year with people who are already hairdressers. They're already stylists. They're already salon owners. And it was that kind of learning process of how to inspire them, how to motivate them, how to elevate them, how to share with them something that shaved off 30 seconds from every haircut, how to share with them something that would inspire them and take them out of the doldrums of doing Mrs. Smith every day. And I think also too, sharing things with them too that made them money, that made them financially successful and made them stand out in the city of Berlin or stand out in the city of Osaka or be the number one in Stockholm. I mean, that's why people took education. And to be clear, Katie, my thing wasn't teaching cosmetology. I've spent a very, very small part of my career teaching beginners, teaching future professionals. 99.9% of my career has been teaching people who were 10 years in, 5 years in, 30 years in.
Well, let me ask you this, because there's a lot of parallels to what you have taken away from Vidal Sassoon that are now applicable to our newer Gen Z stylists. You are so passionate about them. My question is, do you feel like they are desperate for inspiration? And what are they desperate to be inspired to learn? They have strengths, and then there's a lot of area for opportunity because the past and how we did things when we trained up new talent is so different now. What are your thoughts on all that?
I think in many ways, the reason why I'm as passionate as I am is because I think the group of people that we're referring to, and hopefully that group of people that's listening to this podcast, Katie, I think in many ways they're advantaged and they're also disadvantaged. So, Stephen, unpeel that one. They're advantaged in the fact that they have more in the palm of their hand. as in, we talked about an iPhone earlier, than someone 30, 40 years ago had in a world of libraries. So they've got instant access to just about anything. Um, and, do an incredible job of researching, do an incredible job of being inspired by what's in their hand. So that's the advantage that this group of people have. And they've really been raised with that. I wasn't.
Right.
That's new to me. Why are they disadvantaged? Because 99% of what's in their hands not necessarily true. If you research in physics and science, then maybe most of it was true. But in our industry, that's very, very visual. Our industry is very communicative, but I don't know there's a great representation of how to grow, how to improve, how to elevate oneself by looking at this tiny 3-inch by 5-inch screen.
Sure.
And a lot of it,
they have a lot of desires. I mean, you're around professionals all the time. What do you see in this Gen Z group of newer stylists to the industry that they are so desperately seeking, or that you see they should maybe be seeking and they may not realize it?
I think particularly the younger group, the people that are sort of on the first part of Gen Z, 17 through early 20s, I think they've realized that a lot of what's on the internet, a lot of what's on social media, a lot of what's on TikTok is baloney. And it's almost like they're looking at the big sister going, you must be joking, which is what young people do. People say to me, they talk to me about fashion and where do I get the amazing ideas to create the looks that I create. And I look at young people and I look at people who cut their own hair, color their own hair, make their own clothes, make their own music. And often what they're doing with that makeup, often what they're doing with their hair is going against the big sister, going against the mother, going in the opposite direction. And I think, that younger group of people, I think what they're really looking for is leadership. I think they're looking for face-to-face inspiration. They're looking to actually learn from somebody. So it's almost like the cycle's gone all the way in the other direction. And I'm hearing and seeing so many more people now who are showing up for classes, for education, for inspiration, and they want to hear and see somebody and have someone guide them, help them. Whereas maybe the big sister was really happy to look at that on YouTube. They're really happy to look at that on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. The big challenge, Katie, is that, a lot of what we see on social media, and this is something that I just caution people, a lot of it is so doctored. A lot of it is so filtered. A lot of it is cut into pieces and edited back together. And you're not really seeing the full story. And the amazing, amazing thing about our industry that I truly believe is we will never, ever be taken over by AI. We'll never be taken over by computers. Why? Because it's so much emotion is involved. People, I believe many people are not buying a haircut. They're not buying a color. They're not buying a product. They're buying the emotion that goes with that haircut. You find the emotion that goes with that color. And that emotion has to come from a person. How that's delivered is something that really needs to be coached, needs to be guided. And how do you do that? You do that with someone who's got years of experience.
Yeah.
And that is
which you
guiding.
do. And I know that crafting, like communication and how to communicate, how to craft a consultation is key. You mentioned your mom did not give the client an option. It was like, we're doing this today, Mrs. Smith, because this is what I see is going to look best on you. I don't see anybody doing that very often today, right? Where it's always the client sitting in the chair. What are you thinking? What are you wanting to do? You just want to trim today? Or you think it's like, oh my gosh, it drives me wild because I know consumers desperately want a guide. They want the expert to tell them what will look good. Now you're passionate about this. How do you help Gen Zs learn the art of great communication that will help translate into their consultations?
There's only one way to do it, Katie. And what I'm about to say is very controversial, but there's only one way to achieve that, and it's through confidence. And you mentioned that sometimes a stylist just simply listens to the client, says yes, and sometimes yes is the right answer, but sometimes it's not. And as you said, sometimes people want to be guided. They want suggestions. Will they buy that suggestion right there and then? Maybe not. But maybe they've been in the back of their mind about being a red head or having more layers or changing the lens. It's planted a seed, Katie, and that seed then is in their head. And when they come back 6 weeks, 2 months later, tell me a little bit more about that idea that you had. What would it look like on me? Blah, 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 blah. So now we've planted that seed. I think just saying yes to customers is poison because anybody can say yes. And I think to really grow that and to learn that and to really comprehend that, there's one surefire way, and that is to do education. Not do education on a doll head, not do education at a trade show, not do education in a huge classroom, not do education watching Stephen Moody beat his chest and tell everybody how wonderful he is. For me, education at its real core is I'm in a salon, I'm with 8 hairdressers, no more than 8, and they're doing models. So they're cutting somebody's hair, they're coloring somebody's hair. And we're going through a process of a before photograph. We're going through a process of a consultation. We're going through a process of examining who is this woman? And I'm not talking about the shape of her face. I'm talking about what's in her heart, what's in her mind, what's her lifestyle, what does she do for a living? Is she 4'3" or 7'2"? What build does she have? What's her hair type? What's her hairline like? What's her regimen for doing her hair? Does she spend an hour and a half doing her hair every morning, or does she spend 10 seconds doing her hair every morning? So there's so much goes into that consultation. None of that can be taught on a doll head. Very little of that can be taught on Zoom. The challenge with what I just described is it's expensive. It's time consuming. The other challenge is there's not many people can teach that. Most educators are great on Instagram. They're great on a stage. They're great on a platform. They're great with a doll head. But what I've just described is the epitome of quality directed education. You said a word earlier. You said, a client sitting in a chair. So I teach not to sit clients down in the consultation. I have clients stand. I don't have clients draped, and I stand them in front of the mirror. And when you stand a woman in front of a mirror, Kate, you see all kinds of signals. You see a woman who's confident, or you see a woman who's shy. You see a woman who's tall, or you see a woman who's wide, or you see a woman and. So clients sitting down is for for the haircut. It's not for the consultation.
Okay,
And
I want to bring up something because you mentioned these some of these educators are great on Instagram, maybe great on stage, but not necessarily that one-on-one. But let's imagine they are. You shared, I would say the magic number is 12, but you have 8 people under your charge. The requirement is still so much that we need more leaders capable of having 8 to 12, those people underneath them. And that's the big issue. And we're relying sometimes on the big flashy Instagram star educators instead of realizing you have magical, amazing humans right in your salon today that could play these roles and be these mentors. And so investing in leaders of your team that can help them get to that position of better leadership, because we need more. And if we don't get more, I want to talk about what the threat is to our industry and salons. I want to talk about that. But my question quickly, you brought up the consultation being standing. I can just imagine this for myself, but I'm curious, is this a full length mirror or is okay?
Preferably. Yeah.
I'd be like,
Katie, bears your soul.
yeah.
Bears your soul. And I see who you are when I stand you up in front of the ballerina mirror. And I see that you're not comfortable, or I see that you're comfortable. I see you playing with your hair or not playing with your hair. I see you not making eye contact with me in the mirror, or you are making eye contact. I see all kinds of things. But most importantly of all, you're not draped. I'm seeing you. I'm seeing your clothing style. I'm seeing your shoes. I'm seeing your jewelry. I'm seeing your makeup. And there's a million things that I'm seeing. But in my brain, what I'm doing, Katie, my computer brain is calculating, who is this woman I'm looking at here? Who is this person? I've not opened my mouth yet. Not said a word.
Observing.
But I'm looking with my eyes. I'm listening with my eyes. The next thing I do, Katie, I ask Katie for permission to not talk to her. Katie, would it be okay if I played with your hair? Would it be okay if I put my hands in your hair? And I'm taking Katie's hair and now I'm molding Katie's hair above her shoulders. Or I'm molding Katie's hair on her face. Or I'm molding Katie's hair onto her face. Or I'm molding Katie's hair into a fringe. And all the time, I'm looking in the mirror to see two things. One, what does it look like on Katie? Two, is she twitching? Is she smiling? Is she getting more comfortable? Is she getting more uncomfortable? And then I turn Katie sideways and I look at what does all of that look like in profile. So now I'm looking at Katie from the side view. And then I spin around and I look at Katie from the back and I do all of that. And now I'm looking at her from the back. So I'm getting a 360 of Katie and I've not said a word other than, Katie, do you mind if I play with your hair? That's all I've said so far.
So much. 'Cause in my head, because I think of how the operational side of this, I'm like, okay, how long do you book your consultations for? Clearly, I'm not paying for the haircut, right? I'm paying for this experience. I'm paying for another level of expertise. I would never expect to come out of this, in $100 price range. This is going to be multiple hundreds. And in my head, it's just exceptional. So I love it. I'm like dreaming here. Like I want to be the girl that you do this with. I want to come wherever you're at and I want this experience. And the kind of clients that want that, is there a threat in our industry? We kind of spoke about this a minute ago. If things don't change, if we don't elevate the way we communicate and consult and help Gen Z's leaders helping, what's the threat to us and what's this going to turn into if we don't kind of maybe come back to a different level of expectation and standards for ourselves?
I think there's two directions. And my family are salon owners. To this day, they're salon owners. Some of my best friends as salon owners. I really only know hairdressers. I don't really know too many civilians. And many of those hairdressers are salon owners, and I talk to them every week, all the time. They're my customers. I work for Paul Mitchell, and we sell to salon owners. We sell to hairdressers. But one of the biggest challenges that they have is simply staff. It's not clients. It's not getting clients through the door. It's getting young people that have a passion for what they do, for wanting to have a long-term investment with what they do. Stephen, what does that mean? As we know, you don't build a clientele up in 5 minutes. You don't earn a six-figure income in a year. It takes time. And to do that, the ideal for me is someone who owns a salon, who hires people, employs people, and invests in those people with their future, with their education, with their path of building a clientele. But in return, Kati, that person invests in that salon owner in a 5, 10, 15, this year for me is 45 years career path. So I think for people listening who are not salon owners, this is a two-way street, Kati. And to answer your question, that the challenge is that over a period of time, and we already see this in the States, and particularly in California, there are less and less and less hair salons. And there are more and more and more suites, and there are more and more chair rentals, none of which are wrong, but it's a challenge for someone who's 19 to come out of cosmetology school and rent a suite. The fatality rate is insanely high. Why? And I'm not being rude here. Most 19-year-olds who come out of cosmetology school and rent a suite, they don't know what they're doing. I didn't know what I was doing when I was 19, and I was in the best place on earth. So for me, the future is kind of a little bit of a loop, really. It's kind of going back to a scenario where people do apprenticeships. People have relationships with a salon owner, and a salon owner has a relationship with a young up-and-coming apprentice that becomes a stylist, that becomes a six-figure earner. But it's a two-way relationship. And like any marriage or any kind of relationship, the minute that marriage goes one-sided, it's on the rocks. So that employee-employer relationship is a 50-50. It's a give and a take. And I spend a lot of my time in Europe. And I have the privilege of working in Greece, in Italy, and in Spain. And in many ways, I think that apprenticeship program, that commissioned salon or salaried salon is more healthy and more alive than it is in the US. And people say, why are hairdressers better in Europe than they are in the US? I don't know they are. I don't know they are. I just think they get off to a better start. I think they get off to a better start. So again, just my humble opinion, if you are looking at renting a chair, if you're looking at a suite scenario and you're new, I would just give that a second thought. And if you're in a relationship with a salon owner, just remember that relationship is a two-way street. It's give and it's take.
I love that. Well, what are you hopeful for? I know behind the scenes you said you're typically asked, what do you think is coming up next in this industry? I'd rather say, what are you so hopeful for that you would love to see happen in the next 2 to 3 years in our industry?
So what am I hopeful to see in the next couple of years, Katie? I think I've touched on one of them earlier, and that is the renaissance of the salon, the renaissance of the salon owner, the trust and the relationship between the employer and the employee. Um, I'd like to see very, very quickly that states and cities and countries make it easier on a salon owner with taxes and legislation, because it is tough. The margins are fine. So I'd like to see that whole side of things. I know this sounds silly, but go back to where they used to be, where there was great jobs in great salons with great salon owners who produce great stylists. So that's one side of what I'd love to see. The other side I'm already seeing, and that is crafty hair. Stephen, what does that mean? It means, for hair color, less painting of hair and more block color, 2 and 3 colors on one head. Color that really communicates to the haircut, color that communicates to the haircut and the person. The art of foiling has almost disappeared. And I'd love to see that come back around. Why? Because it drives people into salons. I don't know painting necessarily does. Plus, it's passé. It's been around for 20 years. It's old. And then the other one, kind of the other two are really kind of linked. That is, hair's been pretty straight or beachy waved for a very, very, very long time. And I'm already seeing, when I go to Japan and when I go to the UK or whatever, I'm seeing a lot more shoulders and above. And a lot of the young kids with shoulders and above, they have perms. They have texture in their hair, and their hair's really cool and different. And they're not afraid of color. They're not afraid of not being blonde.
Yeah.
They're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. And I think it comes back to what we were saying earlier about not wanting to look like the big sister, not wanting to look like their mum. So my daughter is in Hollywood. She works in the movies. She's in the costume department. And she went to London for 4 years to study at the University of the Arts to get a degree in costume design. And year one, Katie, she was in London for general fashion studies. It was only year 2, 3, and 4 that was focused on costume design. So on year one, I took her for a coffee when she came back on a summer break and said, what did you learn this year? She said, well, this year was general fashion studies. And we learned that fashion goes round in circles. And my first thought was, oh my God, I could have told you that. You didn't need to go all the way to.
Yeah.
I said, just humor me and give me an example. She said, well, a hemline. Think about a hemline, Dad. A hemline goes up and up and up season by season. And at some point, it can't go any higher for obvious reasons. I said, then what happens? She said it goes down, and it goes down and down and down and down. And then it gets to the ankles, and it can't go down anymore. And she said it's the same with, clothes being formal and classical, but then they swing over to being grungy and messy and casual. She said things just go around in circles. And all the time she's saying this, I couldn't stop thinking about us and hair. Yeah. And we kind of talked a little bit about this earlier on with men's hair. There's a great renaissance for men's hair that's finger length and longer, finger width, I'm sorry, and longer. Why? Because hair's been clipped off for ever and ever and ever and ever. So the opposite to clip it off is to keep some hair.
Speaking of
So
which, you have a great head of hair. Is this your natural texture? Is this your natural curl?
I
Beautiful.
just got this back from the dry cleaners, actually. Yeah.
Man, you look good. That is a good head of hair right there, Stephen.
I have my parents and Paul Mitchell to thank for
Yeah.
that.
Well, I love this conversation, and I honestly, truly hope that we can meet in the next year face to face because we never have. Before we're done, Stephen, what would be some final words of wisdom for the Gen Z stylists that are listening and possibly the salon owners that are nurturing those Gen Z stylists?
So I think my word of advice there kind of applies to both groups of people, and that is plan. Create a calendar for success. And on that calendar, really map out education. Um, you know, every successful hairstylist, every successful salon owner, they have one thing in common, and that is they invest in themselves. They invest in education. This is not a commercial, but Paul Mitchell recently opened a brand new advanced academy in Rome, Italy. I was fortunate enough to be there and open that up and teach the first class over there. At the beginning of 2026, we're doing exactly the same. There's going to be a brand new Paul Mitchell Academy in Santa Monica. Not a salon, not a cosmetology school. It's a place for hairdressers to really learn business, to elevate their game with styling, to move on their craft of coloring hair, of cutting hair. And I would really advise people to look at the calendar, map things out a year, 18 months in advance, and invest in themselves. I talked about mum earlier, and she did exactly that every single year. And it elevates your game. It elevates your game both financially and also craft-wise, but also something else too. And I'll end on this, Katie. I truly believe that hairdressers are like batteries. A battery gives and gives and gives and gives. And if that battery gives enough, it's not the ever ready bunny anymore. And there's only two solutions to a battery that's given all it can give. And that is that it has to be replaced or recharged. We're hairdressers, and every day standing behind a chair, we give and we give and we give and we give. And yeah, we get back tips and this and that and the other, but we're giving every day. And at some point, if we're not careful, our batteries go flat. We need to be recharged. And the finest way to recharge that battery is to step away from your environment, step away from that client. In the world of Stephen Moody, there's only two lots of people. There are clients. And people listening, I highly recommend you write this one down. Clients are people with money and not so much time. They pay your bank account. They pay a car payment. They pay your mortgage. The other group of people are models. Models typically have more time, but less money. They pay your soul. They recharge your battery. A model is not someone who's 6'4" and is on the front cover of Vogue. A model might be someone that you run into at Goodwill or Salvation Army or a coffee shop or a college. And they want to look good, but they just plain don't have very much money. They do have time. So something that I do all the time, once a week, I'll cut a model. Is she a model? Is she with an agency? Is she like Instagram worthy? Sometimes, sometimes not. But she's typically someone that I can spend 2 and 3 hours with and refine my craft and recharge my battery. Clients recharge my bank account. They pay me $200 for me to cut their hair, but they've got to be in, they've got to be out, they've got to be gone.
Yep.
Clients, more money, less time. Models, more time, less money.
Oh,
Do both.
I think it speaks to somebody who is so passionate about their craft that to you recharging your battery is to work on the craft, on your creative gift, and to do it with somebody that you just handpick that doesn't have to be tied to your social media presence. That truly is something that could be such a way to serve people that you may never even know. So there's so much good to that. And I wrote everything down that you said because it's gold. And I just really appreciate you being here, Stephen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And
You're
thank you
welcome.
all for joining us here week after week at Beyond the Technique. If you appreciate this platform, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening so that more people like yourself will discover Beyond the Technique, where we're here to change the way that you are supported in your business. Until next time, have an awesome day and stay strong.